Hello, everyone. Warmest welcomes to the Holy Comforter Episcopal Church YouTube Bible study. I'm Jimmy Abbott, the priest here at Holy Comforter Episcopal Church in Spring, and I have some thoughts and reflections for you about the gospel lesson for this upcoming Sunday, August 9th, 2020. The lesson is taken from the 14th chapter of Matthew, verses 22 through 33. I always read that to make sure I get the numbers right. Anyway, chapter 14, verses 22 through 33. We continue on from what we read last week, which was Jesus feeding the multitudes out in the wilderness, and now Jesus has instructed his disciples to cross the sea again. This is that famous passage of Jesus walking on the water out to the disciples, and then Peter getting out of the boat and walking out to Jesus. And if you notice there, it says that when Peter begins to notice the strong wind, he becomes afraid, and then he begins to sink. Notice that he only begins to sink after he is afraid. There's all sorts of images about fear in this passage, right? They see Jesus and they think he's a ghost, so they're afraid, and Jesus says, "Do not be afraid." So let's talk a little bit about fear. I actually think that our first and primary fear ought to be the fear of God. Fear of God as in reverence, of awe, of wonder at this God of might and of power. If we have our fear of God in proper place, then all the other fears in our lives fall into order. And then those other fears aren't so scary anymore if our first fear is of God. So during this time of pandemic, of economic uncertainty, of political turmoil, ask yourself, what are you afraid of? What do you fear? And how are those fears dragging you down, causing you to sink in the waves? And then reorient your spiritual life so that fear of God is your first and primary fear, so that all those other fears can be put into place. And I think what we find when we fear God properly is that we learn that God loves us and God cares for us, and God will not abandon us, just as Jesus reaches out his hand to Peter to pull him up. So Jesus promises to do for you. Thank you so much for joining me. I would love to hear from you. Send me an email, make a comment here, and we can continue to be in touch to keep up the conversation about this good news of Jesus Christ.